start, because we have an agenda of an hour, I would like to welcome Barry Nadler, who is the speaker for tonight, with all the information, the introduction about Beyond Instructional Design Cohort. We want to confirm that the idea of doing this session is honestly to give you all the answers in case that you are looking forward to see if this is the right program that you want to be part of. Barry will start in a minute. We are going to have also a few information about new events that are coming up, but as I say, time runs too fast, so let's go to a little bit of the structure for tonight for our webinar. I'm going to ask each one if you can silence your cell phone for any notification. As I say, we have about 35 minutes or 40 minutes presentation from the speaker, Barry Nadler. And after he finished his presentation, we are going to have the session for questions and answers. I invite you to use also the chat, and we will be monitoring and finding out who is first and what questions come first. But you also have the opportunity to raise your hands and engage in that way, so that we can hear you speaking too. I didn't say, but my name is Maria Francis Rodriguez. I am the VP of Program Operations, and it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. The next session, I will give the opportunity to Barry to start his presentation. Thank you, Barry, so much for being here.
Sure.
As you know, we consider you an asset for our chapter. Since I have been here, you have more than 6 years involved in the activities, and you have been a great supporter and collaborator. Thank you for that, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Down at the bottom, you'll see there's some text stuff going on. That is the closed captioning that's inside of PowerPoint that's doing that. So it's picking me up without any work on my part. It's just picking up the microphone. If you've never seen this, it's under the slideshow closed captions. Use the auto captions, it's there. So I'm going to leave it up there, but I like to point it out because I've seen it at some conferences, and some people were doing it, some people weren't. And I decided to start doing it as an accessibility thing, because you just never know if somebody needs that on the screen or not. And people have commented on it, so I leave it up. Today, we're going to be talking about a program that we're putting together called Beyond Instructional Design. It is designed as a cohort program, so it is designed to be an event that spans multiple sessions rather than one single session. And that's because there's just so much to talk about, and there's so much to bring into this thing. So what we're doing today is I'm going to share some of the information. We're going to do some QA. And I'm going to make an offer and let you guys see kind of what the cost is and what's involved in that. And then if you're interested, you go and you register. Okay. So who am I? Who's Barry Nadler? I am a learning consultant specialist at FIS. I've been with FIS for like 18 years now. What I've done there is I've been client-facing e-learning instructional design. I've done internal employee instructional design and course creation. And now I am responsible for colleague training within the banking solutions world. So FIS is a financial technology company. We serve banks, we do payments, wealth management, all of that kind of stuff. I train internal employees on our product lines and some of our systems and things like that. I am a past board member of this chapter, the Central Florida ATD, and I've been a speaker at various events, including those of the Learning Guild and Training Magazine. And actually next week, I'll be up in Raleigh speaking at the TICE conference, which is Training Industry Conference and Expo. I have been a haunted house videographer. That is not a paranormal expert. That is a haunted house during Halloween time. There's a local Halloween attraction here in town that I was a part of. And while I was there, I was also their manager on their stage. So I was a local concert promoter. At the same time, I've been an associate producer for a Motley Crue tribute band here in town. I've been a concert photographer. I've shot large events that are like festivals. I've shot local shows. I've shot arena shows. So I've kind of done a lot of different things there. I'm a hobby board gamer. I enjoy fantasy and sci-fi, and I also enjoy traveling and adventures. We just came back from a 3-week trip to Colorado Springs and Denver and Fort Collins, and getting ready to do Raleigh. Like I said, I got a couple of days on either end of that. So I enjoy that a lot. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on. So how did I come across this solution thing that we're creating here called Beyond Instructional Design? This has been a work that has come from several years of effort on different things, and it really becomes a connecting the dots type of a game. So what we've done is I had to build a curriculum in like 90 days using various SMEs back in 2019. And that's kind of where this all started. I realized that I couldn't act as a traditional instructional designer, and I had to come at it from a different way because of the time frame that was required. And so I ended up leveraging my SMEs and turning them into media creators. And I ended up being just a packager of information, a facilitator of discussions, things of that nature, to create this curriculum for about 4 different roles across several different teams that I was working with. And we did it successfully. And then I kind of came to find out that this was a new model that was happening across the industry. I started seeing it in different places, and I did it just naturally. So that was part 1. Part 2 is I had to do a presentation for the Learning Guild for a thing called the LXD online forum event that happened about 2 years ago now, I think it was. And they had asked me to be the wrap-up person on the event. And I realized that what I did, the thing I brought to the table for everybody, was the connecting of the dots. And we really took that into heart when we started talking about this. And we said, let's look at it as a cookbook, and the different recipes, and you're taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you're putting it all together to create something new. So that was that piece. I also, over this time period, have read several consulting books and other L&D books. And some of this was because I had taken on some new roles. I was taking on some leadership stuff at work, and I needed to kind of think a little differently. So add to that a whole lot of transitioning teachers coming into the world of learning and training and instructional design. And they were all seemed to be missing things in the curriculum. It seemed to be that there was a whole lot of here's how you do e-learning, but not enough of here's how you actually think like an instructional designer and a learning professional in the industry. And then the last piece is I became part of the global learning team. So I was a client-facing training employee. I worked with a few internal employees, but by becoming part of the global learning team at FIS, I really had to take on the role of a consultant. And I really had to solve problems across lots of different parts of the organization. And when I say that FIS is a large organization, we have 70,000 employees across the globe. So I really had to be thinking a little bit differently than, oh, let's just make a course after course after course after course. So that's how we came up to this solution. I kind of put all of those things in a pot, and everything that I've learned from all of these experiences have become this thing that I'm trying to share with everybody. So what we've learned is that the world has changed over the last several years. We're all having to do more with less, and that includes L&D teams as well as the teams that L&D supports across their business. So that includes less money, less people on the different teams, less time being available for projects. We all have to move very quickly on things. So how do we compensate for not having enough people on our team to have the skills that we need? And how do companies grow and meet their goals, given that all teams typically have these challenges. And I'm going to ask for a moment, can Vicky and Karen both unmute their mics? And would you say that you guys are seeing these challenges in your environment as well?
Yes. In fact, my company just went through what they called a reshuffle. And so my team got absorbed into another team. And yeah, so less money, less people,
Okay.
more things
All
needed.
right. Karen, what is it? What company do you work for? And what do you, I'm assuming you're an instructional designer.
So I'm actually not an instructional designer. However, I work for Allstate and I work on their CX team. And so my role is CX culture enablement. And a lot of the work that I'm doing with culture change and change management has to do with training and learning opportunities. So I sort of have become more of an L&D person than I was before.
Okay. And I am very familiar with CX. For those that don't know, CX is customer experience. My team that I'm on is part of a customer experience organization as well.
Okay, cool.
We used to be called Banking Solutions, but now we are the CX organization under Banking Solutions, which covers client support, client training, client service managers, all that kind of stuff. Does that map to what you've got?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
And even broader because they have people in charge of the various journeys of our customers and then specializing in those areas as well. Yep.
Okay.
That's actually part of the shift that happened for us, is that Vicky is now part of the operations team, service delivery. And so creating learning for people on the service delivery side. And so our internal staff, our customer is the internal staff member. But she and I are collaborating on things all the time. We literally were on a call earlier, and so she may be back to that call. And yesterday we were all day in the office training program managers who support those staff that we train. So it's very similar to what you're doing, but you're doing it for external customers.
So some other challenges that we are seeing in the field is that L&D professionals are seeing a shift in our roles, and we've just kind of talked about that. We're seeing lots of teachers enter the field, and there's a dramatic increase in the pace of change that's happening in our businesses, and how fast people need to learn things and, you know, change their job roles. So learners are looking to us, to provide them things like career paths and guidance, making learning something to be excited about rather than a punishment that they just have to get done, and easy access to valuable content and resources when they need them. They are not coming to us for a course. We tend to put a course out there as a solution, but that's not what they're actually looking for. They're not looking for a course. Our organizations are looking to us to be able to speak to them about the real value of learning using a language that they understand. And they're looking for ongoing conversations about growth, retention, and workforce capabilities. Those tend to come from the HR departments and the executive teams. And the speaking to them about the value of learning tends to come from the teams that we support. So in the session that we did, I think it was about a month ago now, it might have been a little more of that, but I shared this model that I had put together, which was a stalactite model for an L&D professional based on the T model. I don't know if anybody has ever seen that. I didn't go into that here, but the model of an L&D professional is you have to be very broad, know a lot about a lot of different things, and you have to have different skill sets in different areas to meet that. And this is just an example where it includes media creation, audio and video, psychology, visual design, some ID skills, facilitation skills, business acumen, webinar production, and the list can go on and on depending on what part of the business you work in. There's probably domain knowledge around what you're doing. You know, Karen, you're at, was it Allstate? Yeah, Allstate. So that's insurance. So you got to know about insurance. You got to know about the customer experience and all of that stuff. So you got to add all of that in here. You know, Rosa and Vicky, they both work for where they help people get jobs. So you've got that. Rosa, what's the name of the company again that you are with? So again, you have domain knowledge there that has to come in here. Plus you have leadership skills and things like that, depending on what your role is in project management. So that's the kind of stuff that we're thinking about here for an L&D professional. And what ends up happening is this ID skills and visual design and maybe this media creation become the focus of a lot of training around how to be an ID. But yet there's all this other stuff. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to talk about as part of this program.
Career source.
Career source, there you go.
Yeah.
To make some value here for you, you know, because you came to the event, I wanted to share some things with you. I have 3 things of value that I want to offer you to help you think like a consultant. And the first is we're going to look for new models around how to create and deliver training programs. The second is we're going to rethink our learning ecosystems. And then the third is that we're going to ask different questions to get new types of data. So this is the first item. And this is some shifts that we're seeing in the field. And this actually isn't that different than what I talked about at the very beginning. But I've separated it out here for shifts for business along the top and shifts for learners at the bottom. So for our businesses, they're asking things like, can talent keep up with the pace of change? What are the human skills what human skills are important due to global and remote work? How do we transfer and share knowledge? And work seems to be more cognitive, which is brain work, and more complex for some reason now than it did several years ago. So at the bottom, the learners are looking at things like when, where, and how does learning happen? Who creates and delivers training? How do we find information when we need it? And how do we know the information is reliable? And would you guys agree that you're seeing this in your field? You can just, I see you shaking your head. So there you go. So about 2 years ago, I'm thinking it was now, I was in a webinar and this lady, Crystal Katakia, was on the webinar and she was talking about this new model that she had put together. And as she was talking about it, every single thing that she brought to the table seemed to check a box around what I was doing. And this was about the same time that I had shifted the way that I was developing because I had that program that I mentioned at the very beginning. I had to create all of that content in 90 days. And I realized that finally I had a format, a formal model that I could map things to. And so to go through that model real quick is around clusters of learning and assets, which is allowing you to design for the whole and not the parts. So you're looking at surrounding your learner with resources, basically. So rather than thinking about your program as a single course, it's a cluster of things. One of those might be a course. Some of them might be assets like videos. Other things might be job aids. Some things might be a training guide. It's lots of different things that make up the whole. So rather than creating this one thing, we can now have multiple things that create a whole. It goes beyond a one and done solution. So these are learning resources that are flexible in both time, place, and because it's not a one and done, there's more that it keeps getting added to. You add new parts, new clusters over time, and then people take those clusters over time. You're focusing on the learner's needs. You're empowering learners to choose the resources and activities that suit their needs and preferences. There's the 5 moments of need that's out there. And whenever somebody comes to your training program, it depends on their moment of need and what they're trying to accomplish. And because you've designed for the whole, not the parts, and you've created clusters of learning assets, they can pick and choose the assets that are of value to them at the moment. They can take that and they can run with it. Then we have the ability to change on the job behavior. Because you're focused on the end goal, your job is to change the behavior, not create a training course. So now you're looking at these clusters and saying, what can I add to these clusters that are going to allow folks to change their behavior? And then lastly, we're upgrading existing assets. So we're not focused on creating new, we're picking up existing assets and we're cleaning them up and making them valuable. And the 2 things that I really gravitated to where this upgrading existing assets and designing for the whole and not the parts. When you work for a very large company, as you do, Karen, you will realize there's a lot of stuff that already exists, a lot of documentation, a lot of tools and resources. Some of them are out of date. Some of them are in branding that is not current. Some of them can be fattened up with more information. But in general, this stuff already exists, and there's no point in going through and making new versions of it. You're better off grabbing those things, adding it to your curriculum, and then maybe adding a video at the front end that explains what this stuff is and how to use it and why it's valuable, and put some context around it and build that rather than building the asset. So that's the way I've been thinking about that. And I will show you, there's the book. I have the book. So that's truth that I read that book. Okay, so next, let's talk about a modern ecosystem and what does that look like, a modern learning ecosystem. So about a year ago, I was at the Learning Solutions Conference and I saw our very own JD Dillon. JD Dillon is a member of the Central Florida ATD chapter, and he lives here in Orlando. And I went to go see what he had to say, and I was shocked, actually, because what he had on the screen and what is in this book resonated really hard with me. I was like, wow, that's a really cool thing. So let me share with you what it was that he had that was part of his model that he was working off of. So on the screen here, I've got a list of some of the different things that we can build and put together as a learning professional. Karen, are you familiar with all of these things? Do they make sense to you? I know Rosa and Marie, I know you guys are familiar with this stuff, but
The only thing is the pull and push training, but the other thing, yeah.
So pull training is when I am the learner and I go out and I try and find things and I pull it to me. Push training is when you as the organization say, okay, everybody's going to take this program, here it is. And they're already pre-registered. Mm-hmm. It could be formal training, it could be e-learning, it could be whatever, but it's who goes after that learning material. Is it pushed out to them? Is it forced on them and they're pre-registered, or are they choosing it for some reason? This list is in no particular order, okay? But what would happen if we put a priority on top of it? So now you've got the high stuff at the bottom and the low stuff at the top. I know that's backwards, but it works for the diagram that he created. So your high priority stuff tends to be the push training. That's the stuff that people come to you and they say, everybody's got to take this stuff, go ahead and make this training and give it to everybody. And then on top of that, you add in the pull training, and then shared knowledge becomes those various resources and such. Coaching, reinforcement, and performance support tend to kind of get pushed off to the back. And like coaching, we tend to push off on managers of the department, and we may or may not give them any guidance on how to do it. Reinforcement and performance support tends to be, systems driven. Performance support might be like an online help system or something, or a wiki or that kind of thing. So now, if we add another chart along the bottom that says availability, how available are these things? So push training is not nearly as available as everything else because of the fact that it's typically a live, face-to-face, virtual, or in-person training. So that becomes only available when it's on schedule. The pull training side of that tends to be a little more available, but that still is e-learning and it takes time to build, and the recordings are available, people have to go find them. That shared knowledge tends to be available all the time. The reinforcement and the performance support are in the same boat because they're inside of other systems. Coaching tends to be a manager, depending on if that manager is available. You follow what I'm saying? Is that tracking? Okay, good. So if we know the priority and the availability, what would happen if we stacked it like this? And all of a sudden we drew a line kind of right through that reinforcement or just above it. And we said, when we're going to solve a problem, let's start at the bottom because we know that that is a high priority, high availability thing. And and that's like the Google stuff, right? It's like, I can search for this and I don't need another human. I just need to be able to find the thing I'm looking for, be it in the LMS, be it wherever, the wikis, the intranets, the whatever. So you start there, and then you work on the performance support, and then you work on the reinforcement. Then last, you think about coaching, because that requires another person, right? That requires the manager to be available and that the manager has the skills to do it. Then you think about, okay, do I need to make e-learning or not? Do I need to make a course or not? Do people actually need to sign up for a course? Now you go back to that idea of building a cluster, right? And not everything is a training course. They don't want the training courses, right? We go back to the challenges of what the learners are looking for. They're looking for the stuff that's at the bottom. So that's the way to go with this. And this is what I read, what resonated with me hard. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. We're spending so much time at the top, and the priority is actually kind of low on that when we should be spending time at the bottom. Now, the problem comes that it's never as easy as it looks, ever. And I am now in the process of trying to implement this. It's taken me this long from last year to now to be in a position to be able to start implementing this. And I do feel sometimes like I'm pushing a rock up a hill with it. And the problem is I don't own the systems. The company has them, but I am not in control of them, right? I can kind of control the learning management system because that's part of the learning teams stuff, but I don't control all the wikis that are out there, the Teams channels. I don't control the intranet stuff, all of that. Other people do. And then like we had a situation where there was a woman who'd been with the company for over 3 years. She had a Microsoft OneNote that she kept, and she called it the Fissipedia. And it's basically an encyclopedia of everything she knows as different articles in her OneNote with tabs and different articles and stuff. And whenever new people show up on the team, she shares this OneNote with them. The problem is on the back end, somebody that we completely don't control, the IT team, they're changing URLs and things on the back end, and they're moving things around. So her OneNote works for her because they've set it up so that it's constantly working for her. But because there's a lot of hyperlinks between articles, I think every time they make a change on the back end, it breaks her links. The other problem that's happening out there in her world is the articles get outdated. Like we changed a system. We changed our client management system, the ticketing system. Now we use ServiceNow or Snow. So all of her instructions that were based on the previous ticketing system are obsolete. So what ends up happening is she's got to go in and she's got to keep making all these changes. So one of the things that we're working with her on is we have a system inside of ServiceNow that's a knowledge base. And so what we're hoping to do is get her to move all of the relevant articles out of her OneNote into the ServiceNow knowledge base. So when anybody puts a ticket into the system looking for support or needing some help, these articles might come up and she can find them. And other people might catch it and go, hey, that one's out of date, or hey, this needs to be addressed. And they can either update it themselves, or she's not the only one. So again, never as easy as it looks. There's always something else that's a part of this that we have to be thinking about, but it's not impossible. And just for the record, there's JD's book. Okay, got that one.
I like that idea, Barry, that you just said about, the creating that knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share a little bit more about what that looks like on, your end? What is ServiceNow? And
so ServiceNow, so if you're a customer and you call into FIS, you're going to get a ticket number, and that is a support piece of information that somebody will take away, and they will go get a problem solved for you, and you'll have that on your end. It's like a confirmation number. So what ends up happening is when I call back, I say, hey, I'm calling about ticket number, blah, 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 blah. right? So the customer service rep on the other end, when they go to put that ticket into the system, they have to put like a description and they have to title the ticket so that it can be found in the database. When they do that and they hit return or something like that, I think that's how it works. A list of articles that are tagged in a way that match what they're talking about comes up. And it could be whatever. I mean, it's like a Google search of the ticketing system.
Okay.
And so they go through and they have to like manually figure out which one is appropriate or not. But the more articles that are in there, the more likely something's going to come up. So
That's awesome.
does that make sense?
It does. It does. And that clarification helped me kind of see how we could build something like that in our organization. Because we do have that. We do have a lot of people that are, in their role for a long time and very skilled and have created job aids or have those like answers at the ready sometimes, right?
Yeah.
That we emailed or something. So now really, I think the task is going to be collecting all of that and then creating the wiki, if you will. But I could see how that would be the place where people go first, looking at your inverted, where are people going and where's the need.
That thing?
Yeah, exactly. So I could see how we could, create that shared knowledge with those, like articles and tools that people already have. So that I see that as our internal wiki that we're trying to build. And then support could be like other tools and things that we create for them.
Right. The support is like the job aids and things that you link inside of that knowledge base.
Inside of that. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
I just saw that we have a new face in the list there. Scott Cruz.
Yeah, we've got Scott
Kraus. I'm sorry, Scott Kraus.
Yeah.
Got it.
There he is.
We're working with open mic
but we
here,
have
so you're welcome to just
we have a future instructional designer next to Karen. Do you see
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yes.
Who?
A future instructional designer. He's sitting there with his mama.
Oh, okay. I got it.
On my phone.
Yes.
Yeah. So by the time he's ready to join the workforce, he knows he's going to know what to do. He'll be brilliant.
About learning.
He will teach all of us about computers.
He'll be brilliant. He will be brilliant.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on because we got like 15 minutes left on time. I can go longer if you guys want, but I'm trying to respect the time.
You can go longer because really, hey, Barry, you can go longer because honestly, since this is a small group, I do have questions and I'm gonna wait for the end.
Okay.
But because
we don't all have that time, so we want to be respectful of people's time. Yeah. Whoever wants to hang longer can hang, but
he's pretty good on time right now.
Okay. All right. So anyway, the item number 3 that we're going to talk about is leaning into KPIs and business data. So KPIs are key performance indicators. It's how a business measures its success. It goes by other names, but the one I hear most often is KPIs.
Yeah.
So this information is information that I learned at an ATD workshop at ATD ICE in 2022. And Rosa's shaking her head because she was in the session. And honestly, it was a very brain heavy session, but there was like one piece of information in that session that I took home and I was like, that's the thing. I'm not a brainy person and I don't think about all this math and stuff that was going on in that session, but this one thing was like really valuable. So it's about getting better data. And here's the problem. Your business doesn't care about how many people registered for your session. They don't care about how many people completed the courses, and they don't care about whether the learner enjoyed the experience. But we do. We think they do. We think they care about it because that's the data that we have. That's the data that comes out of our learning management systems. So what we need to be able to do is translate that information there into something of value that the business can care about, and then they can advocate for learning. They care about, does the time and training increase revenue? Does the time and training increase efficiency of their people? Can new employees be client ready faster? And can an employee self-serve in your performance support and your knowledge management stuff when they have challenges right now. And I can verify this, that this wasn't just information that came out of a session. As part of my work that I'm doing now, I'm sitting down and I'm acting as a consultant with different business teams. And I changed the question, which is what we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But in changing the question, these are the kind of answers I got as to what are your challenges. And so that's a different thing than how many people signed up for the class, and what, because they don't even care about whether people learned it. They just want to know that there was a result that came from the training program that people were a part of. So the key is to ask different and better questions. Instead of asking, what training do you need? You ask, what challenges are your team facing? And literally I did that. We had a team that for almost a year was trying to do what I'm doing now. And they went out and they said to the teams, what training do you need? We're going to give you a spreadsheet, put the training challenges, the training needs that you have in this spreadsheet, and we'll get it made for you. They were asking, what courses do you want us to make? And they were getting nothing. It was like, they were like pulling teeth to get information from people. It was terrible. I came in, and within about, I would say 2 or 3 weeks, I had my contacts available. I knew who I needed to talk to. I set up meetings with them. And the first question I said to them was, what challenges are your team facing? And within 30 days of multiple meetings based on that question, I had 5 or 6 curriculums that I'm now in the process of building because of understanding what the challenges are. Once I know what the challenges are, I can consult and prescribe training programs that meet those challenges rather than just trying to solve, whatever training need they think they have. So change that question. And now we're talking about asking new questions. So this is your level 1 survey, right? Instead of asking about the learner experience and reaction, which happens at the end of every session, we ask questions like, did you enjoy the material? Did the training meet your expectations? How would you rate the quality of training? How would you rate the quality of the instructor? Was the training relevant? Do you guys ask these questions today in your classes? This is the common stuff. What kind of information do you learn from that kind of data? You learn about whether people liked your program, the quality of the program, whether the instructor was good. You don't learn about whether the people actually were able to take what they learned and applied it on the job. That connection isn't here. And this is LMS data. So I now ask these questions, and I've started building surveys in my programs because I can now have control of this, that ask questions like, what is your current level of confidence in your ability to perform the various tasks covered in the training program as a percentage? What specific measures do you expect to improve in your workplace because of your involvement in the training program? What that does is it forces the person who's taking the survey to take what they're learning and apply it into the real world environment and think about what's actually going to change. Of the information included in this program, what are 3 things that you feel you'll use in your workplace within the next 30 days? That forces them to reach into their brain and recall the things that they learned and put them into their own words in a way that allows them to synthesize it together. And that's a big jargony word, synthesize. But that's what's happening, is they're building something new for themselves that they can go after. What measures do you expect to see improve on the job because of your involvement in this training program? That's the KPI question. That's the piece that forces the person in your class to take what they learned, think about what they're going to change, and then apply it to a business measurement. And because this is a survey, you now have that information. So if you know from asking this question of what challenges is your team facing, you can add on to that, what business measures do you use? You can then take this last question and you can now apply the answers that these folks are giving you to the business metric. And now you can talk the same language as the business. So,
And Barry,
Yes.
Barry, I want to add because so those same books that you raised, I have those books all right here,
Yep.
right? And
There you go.
then I also took
That's the one.
the
There you go. It's hard
um
to see. It's not showing.
that, and then the ROI books, got
Yeah.
those. These are like Bibles, right? So the questions you're asking are the questions we need to ask, right? So that then they see us not as, order takers, but as people who are actually invested and understand the business. But so you're saying ask these questions, like after I take the training. In the
Mhm.
ROI method, right? They say if you ask the questions before and after, then you'll be able to show the ROI as well.
Yeah,
So
and
that
I would agree with that. I got a lot of pushback on it because the instructor's like, I don't want to take more time in class to ask the survey,
right.
But I do think that I agree with the idea of asking them up front some of these questions so that you can get that, as well as having the trainer instructor e-learning course explain what these questions are and are about and what they're for. So it's not
Exactly.
a quick thing. I mean, it might take 10, 15 minutes in your program. So you
Right.
have to really decide whether you can
And,
take
and
that
and
time
it's
or
not
not.
for every program. It may not be for every
Right.
program. Maybe it's for those programs where you're putting in huge investments. People are going out of town, traveling, or it's 3 days at a conference, or 3 days at a leadership development thing, something like that. But again, it moves us to a different seat at the table
Right.
because we're coming with that data that says, I know what I'm talking about, and here's how we're helping the business.
And what you do is you look at, you map that back to this model here from the design for modern learning, and you apply it to the cluster, not the individual items, right? So you're not asking it about every single thing, but if you're building a curriculum, you might ask the question about the curriculum rather than the individual item. And I know, Scott, you were not here when we talked about this, so I apologize if this doesn't make sense to you.
Well, what I'm seeing, Barry, is that listening to your explanation about the key performance indicator around that made me think, well, while you are working with employees in the same business in your company, it's easy to know, okay, they are not able to do this job today, but after the training, they were able to deliver those skills. They really learned the material, right? That's the first, there was a change on behavior, a change on.
I'm not saying that this does not demonstrate that there was a change of behavior.
Of learning.
This demonstrates an intent.
Yeah.
An intent and a knowledge about what is going to change. If you ask these again 30 days, 60 days after the program, now you might find out whether they actually learned something or not.
What they learned.
And then whether they're applying it on the job. And I'm sorry, did you have a question that went with that?
No, I was trying to set myself, of course, in different positions and in different scenarios, because is when you go as a consultant to do a training to a company or to do a public training in a subject matter, you have few ways to evaluate or to evaluate the result after what they think about the training. But there is no too much to say unless you do a test, right? Like when you are working on a certification project, you do tests to evaluate if they really learn the information, if they are able to respond correctly to the test. Right. But of course, if you are in a company and you are training that personnel, you will be able to check that they learn the material that you are teaching them and absorbing the information, I mean. Correct.
Now, I do want to point out, though, that just because somebody learned it doesn't mean they apply it on the job.
That's
true.
So
again, we're talking about different things. So this still does not tell you whether they applied it on the job or not.
Okay.
Not unless you're going to do another study later, 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it needs to be.
Mhm.
So some other books of value, I figured I'd throw these in here. These were the kind of books that I had to read to change how I thought, because I took on more of a consulting type of a role in the company. And this one, Procrastinate on Purpose, a previous manager recommended this to me, and it really changed how I thought, because all of a sudden it basically gives you permission to not do certain things and to think about that. And I know that sounds funny, but it's my time is better served not doing everything. And it allowed me to focus on the things that were most important and then practice the skill of delegation.
Mhm.
And so I was never very good at it, and I still have enough challenges with it, because I like to do things myself, as do most of us. We like to feel like we can do things ourselves. But by delegating things to other people, you're allowing other people to grow, and you're doing the things that are best suited for you. So that's why that book was really good. These others are guides, and they give you a lot of information about consulting and things like that. So that's that. So the point of all of this is this conversation is really just starting, right? These are new ways of thinking. There's things going on in the industry that we all don't even know the answers to yet. An example of that would be how AI is coming in. We don't know yet what AI is going to have as an impact. We just know it's coming, and it will have an impact. But I want this cohort program that we're putting together to be more of a conversation and practice and talking about ideas and helping each other grow, rather than me sitting in front of everybody and lecturing every session that we do. So I'm hoping that this will be an interactive experience for people when we put this thing on. So the program is called Beyond ID. And the goal is to think like a modern learning professional and be able to deal with some of the new challenges that are facing our career field and our businesses, rather than thinking about the way that we used to do things and such. And this is for people that have been in the career field for a few years and are looking for something beyond the basic ID stuff. So I do not expect to be covering basic ID stuff. So I'm expecting that when you come into this program, you've got enough knowledge on it. And actually, I forgot to change the bottom piece here. It's not a 7-week cohort style program. I worked with Maria and we shortened it up, and we're doubling up on a couple of the sessions. So it's really a 7-session cohort style program. And I'm going to show you that here in just a second. So here's what we're going to cover. In session 1, we're going to do a 2-hour event on July 12th, and that's going to be design thinking to be a better business advocate. So we're going to be talking about design thinking and thinking about ways to approach problems and things like that. And then the modern learning design that I talked about in this session, as well as myths about learning. So those two things are going to get covered there. And then session 2 is going to be on July 19th from 7 to 8 o'clock. So that's going to be an hour. And we're going to talk about knowledge management and building the ecosystem and ways that we can do that. That's that second piece that I showed you that was J.D. Dillon's book and such.
Right.
And then session 3 is August 16th. So there is a big gap there between the 19th and the 16th. And that's going to be a 2-hour session. And I'm going to talk about how I leverage SMEs to create content and build that program in 90 days. And then we're going to go into the getting better data from the business and talk about some of that. And then if it's needed, on the 23rd for 2 hours, we'll do a bonus Q&A session for the full cohort participants. And I say full cohort participants because there's different pricing that's going to happen on this. And some of it is you can do stuff based on individual sessions. So if you set up and you decide, I only want session 1, I only want those 2, that bonus session probably won't be available to you unless we work something out on the back end to do that. So what are we going to receive as part of this? You're going to get the recordings of each of the sessions. If there's enough people in the session, you'll have a new network of colleagues. I'm going to offer some cheat sheets and job aids based on the content. There'll be some new resources and tools that you may not have been aware of. And this is going to be a starting point to begin answering questions that were posed, that you bring to the table. So the pricing, and Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I think I saw, was that it was $125 for Central Florida ATD members and then $200 for non-members. Is that accurate?
I need to check that on the website. I don't have it on my
Okay.
mine, but I will. All the information about the non-members, members, and board members are already in the website. So we can, let me go there. You can check that later.
Okay. And then there'll be also pricing based on the individual sessions too, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to open the floor to you guys and let you guys ask questions now. We are at 8 o'clock. So if you have to drop, thank you for joining. I'm happy to stay here and we can chat as long as you guys want. Scott, I know you've been late.
I just ordered the procrastination book.
The which book?
I just
I'm gonna
ordered the
do the same.
procrastination book.
Oh, did you? Awesome. This is why I like Rosa. Rosa always goes out and buys whatever book I recommend. I love it.
Yes, I do. That's how I got the well, the modern learning ecosystem. I bought that one because it was JD.
Right.
But you and I were having a conversation one day, I remember, and then I did that same day. I went and bought the other book.
Mm-hmm. The modern learning design.
Yeah, the designing for modern learning.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I bought it for the team too. I bought like 3 of them because it just like totally made sense. That was what we needed in order to really kick our learning up to the next level.
Mhm.
And I mean, we go back way back. It's like what, 2012, something like that.
Yeah.
And the things that you've done that you've done and then shared have really helped me become a better, not just a learning designer, instructional designer, but a better leader of learning as well. So thank you. This has
You're
been
welcome.
invaluable. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. So I want to kind of point at Scott a little bit because Scott, we didn't get to talk at the beginning. Is there anything you want to share and what brought you here? And can I answer any questions for you based on what you saw since you were here? And if you want me to go back, I'm happy to spend a little time, but I know that there's going to be a recording as well, so you'll have access to that.
No, I came on to support the board team, but also interesting topics. So I might try and jump in this cohort.
Cool, that'd be great.
Because I'm switching positions soon. So where I've been in a project management role the last 1.5 to 2 years. So be back running training. So
you were in training before, then you went to project management. Now you're coming back?
Yeah. Was doing some training for Orange County government. And then I've been basically project management for some naval training. And I'll be headed to UCF shortly. So
nice. I would imagine you'll handle projects a little differently on the training side now that you've had the other project management experience.
Yeah.
It's amazing what being part of a larger part of the business will do when you come back to training. It changes perspective.
Well, and I think, like you pointed to, the power of procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we lean into things and we're way too proactive. Wait until you have a need or a purpose, because a lot of times we just read stuff and learn stuff, which is cool, but if there's no application to it, it's entertainment. So wait until
and it's interesting that you bring that up, because it is. You could have a library of books behind you, which I do, but if you spend all of your time just reading all the things, it doesn't all stick, right? You got to find the things that work at the time that you need it. I think at the beginning of your career, it's a different opinion. You need to kind of suck it all in and figure out what's relevant to you and your new role and your new job and your new career. But as you get older and you spend more time in that career, you need to start filtering, because otherwise it becomes too much and it becomes an entertainment and just a time suck.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you. Cool. Karen, do you have anything that you wanted to ask?
I don't have any questions. I'm ready to sign up. I'm super excited already.
Awesome.
This is so timely for what I'm working on. I'm trying to scale design thinking in our organization. And already I've been working on a white paper for our HR leadership who are not bought in at all and don't get design thinking. And even just the question about what challenges are you facing, I'm like, oh my God, I need to add like a reframe around what challenges design thinking will solve for all.
Ryan, take that question to your stakeholders and see what if the answer changes.
Yeah.
And I'll share this, right? Because so sometimes it's the words you're using, right? It, instead of using design thinking, like just find like what other words could I use versus using design thinking, because it could be like, I honestly, my jaw dropped. You saw my eyes, when you said HR isn't buying into that. I'm part of an HR team, right? And like, even if I wasn't part of an HR team, I still would have had that reaction, right? Because design thinking is about, how can I make sure that this is meeting the need of that customer, right? It's that empathy behind it, right?
Yep.
But so I work for an organization that gets funding from the state of Florida and other sources, right? So we have to be careful about the things that we do roll out, don't roll out, and language that we use. And here's a word, and you're going to have the same moment of shock that I had when you said design thinking. We cannot use DEIB, okay? We cannot use diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, right? Yes.
Oh, well, we're
exactly.
Yes.
We're not just because we're, but okay, right? We are in Florida. So what do we do, right? Is it that we don't do diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging at Career Source Central Florida? We do, right? There are things we have to do by law. So whether whether Florida government says we can't, federal law says, HR, you have to do these things. But then there's other things that we've built into our culture, and we then, I don't want to use the word mask, but it's kind of what we do. We mask it under our corporate values, right? Our culture, which is a thing we've drawn up called the trust creed, right? So then we've got everything under that trust creed. And so those DEIB behaviors and expectations and those programs that Rosa creates that are not DEIB are trust creed journeys, right? Okay, they are not DEIB, they are trust creed journeys, right? So that's what I'm saying. Find a different word. Maybe they're just stuck in, design thinking. We don't need that, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
Because we kept getting beat
UX
up.
designers and not
we kept getting beat up with the, we're not going to do DEIB from our CEO. And I'd be like, what is wrong with these people, right? Okay. Because here I am, the Hispanic, Black, lesbian instructional designer / learning manager, and you're telling me we're not doing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm in the wrong place, right? But then when I really I asked questions. I'm like, okay, well, help me understand. And her thing was, we don't need that verbiage. We have that here, and that helped me understand, okay, there's other stuff going on why we're not using the language, but if I reframe this thing, I can do it. And so again, so we kind of mask it under that trust creed, but it is really rules to live by, right? That diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, it's your culture, right? It's part of your culture.
Right.
So,
and that's why I've got this up on the screen. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Oh, I thought somebody else had said something too.
Yeah. It's me that I was thinking, listening to Rosa is again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Sometimes that's what catch people attention or receptivity, and to be open for it.
Yep. And that's why I went back to this slide. This is the business acumen that we're talking about. We as learning professionals have a problem talking to the business in a way that they understand. I saw this today, actually, in a meeting. I was in a HR meeting that they were talking about all the things that were going on in the HR team, and they kept using the term hypo employees. Do you guys know what that means?
Yep.
High potential.
I don't.
It means high potential employees. It's jargon.
It is. I agree.
If you take information to the business and they don't know what it means, then it doesn't mean anything to anybody
Yeah.
at that point.
It's a waste of
just
time.
it's words, right? So that it's being able to speak, it's being able to drop, in our situation, it's dropping the educational speak. Businesses don't care about learning objectives. They want to know what the goal is.
Mhm.
Outcome.
They want to know what they want to know what the outcomes are going to be, right? It's the same thing, but it's being able to give them the information in a way that they can digest it. That's why when we were talking about, where to go,
KPIs.
this, right? This stuff, the training, what training do you need versus the challenges, right? It's the business doesn't care about this stuff.
Mhm.
They care about this stuff. So it's really just a matter of understanding the verbiage that the business needs you to speak in. Then they'll listen.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you very much.
So there you go. It doesn't sound, Maria, you said you had a question. Did you, what was that?
Yes, Barry. And I know that we are past a little bit, but if you don't mind,
I don't mind.
it's about what kind of assessment of the evaluation are you having in mind to have for the last session, like to help us who are gonna be maybe taking it as a participant that want to verify and confirm that they are getting all that information, learning about the data, learning about the business, communication aspect, and learning about all those skills to prepare webinars or to do presentations and all that. Do you have like a kind of assessment that you have created to evaluate, to help people to evaluate their knowledge at the time of finishing? Is that something that they can get from this program?
So let me make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking me if there's going to be an assessment at the end of this cohort program?
If you have, yes, something that
Sounds
allows
like
you
that.
to get data and then to have data also, to validate or to confirm. Do you have something like that? You were mentioning that you have surveys, right?
That I have what? I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Survey.
You
Surveys.
mentioned
Okay,
about
yeah.
the surveys. So I
So
was
I
wondering
think-
why you say that. I thought, well, maybe he's thinking on having something that can help to get some data from the program.
So I think
So-
what you're saying, Barry, will we have an assessment at the end that measures how we did in the program for the people that sign up?
And in
I
all
know that in
fairness,
the-
I was not planning on having an assessment because
Okay.
it's not knowledge that you're learning.
Mhm.
It's changing how you think.
Okay.
And it's a conversation.
Okay.
It's I'm going to share with you, but I also want you all to share with me because I need the information that you have. Everybody that will be in the program needs the information you have. So we're all going to teach each other. My job is going to be the facilitator and to bring the topics to the table and share what I know and how I've
Okay.
used some of my
Gotcha.
experiences. So
Gotcha.
is there going to be an assessment? It'll
Right.
probably be
So-
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Maria is thinking back to our boot camps that we've
Yeah.
done with you, Barry. And then each, within the cohort, we had the separate groups and there was an expectation of a project, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, the
Deliverable.
project will be that you will probably take these things back to your business
Right.
and try
Yeah.
and talk to people and implement it or ask questions about it. And you'll
Yeah.
bring back what has happened.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Barry. What brought me to the question wasn't your comments about having the survey, getting the data, and all that. So I wanted to confirm if somebody asks about it, you know, that we have the right answer for that, because that was a point that I never thought about it, about.
Well,
I never
Let
thought
me put it to the group. Scott and Karen, do you feel that this content needs an assessment at the end?
No. It's
Hmm.
always fun to have a certificate though.
Right. So
Certificate,
here's-
sure, that's a different thing, yes.
Here's
What
what I'll
about you,
say. 'Cause
Karen? How do you feel?
I plan to take this, and I don't want to have an assessment, and a certificate is cool, but I would like to hear how others are going to apply this at work. Because
Oh.
I may gather, like maybe Karen's going to do one thing and I'm thinking of doing another thing, right? And what she
Right.
says, I'll be like, oh man, that's really cool. Maybe I can also do that, right? So I think there
Yes.
should be some of that, you know?
applicability. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
How do you feel, Karen? Do you think there needs to be an assessment?
Based on the setup like that you just went through, I don't think so. I mean, I'm already thinking about how I can apply just this past 45 minutes worth of content.
That's cool.
That's how I'm going to use it is, you know, the reframes, the questions, and like try to apply it in these real world projects that I am working
Right.
on right this moment, you know?
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Do you
Because
both feel like,
I think that's where the value is going to come from,
Excellent.
because
Yes.
we all come from such different worlds, right? Karen, big company, Allstate, me, itty bitty career source, you know, and then whoever else joins this. I think that's where that value is going to come from, because just because Karen's doing it at that global company doesn't mean I couldn't try something similar, small scale, and she could take what I'm doing, tiny scale, big scale, right? So that's where I think then the value of this type of a cohort group really comes in.
Mhm.
Yes.
Do you guys feel like this was a good use of your hour?
Yes, 100% yes.
Good, good.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, definitely. We just need to figure out how we get more people in here for the cohort.
Yeah.
Awesome.
oh,
Well, we could use the recording of this session.
I
As
am.
promo.
I was just thinking that. That's it. This is the promo. I'm gonna
Yeah.
share it on LinkedIn.
Yep. So this is me again on the screen here. I'm on LinkedIn. There's my email from work. If you guys want to email me, you're welcome to. And I do have a fledgling YouTube channel that I have just never really figured out what to do. Rose is actually on it because I interviewed her at one point, so she's in there. But that's me. So that's what I got. Thanks.
Well,
Well,
thank you very much,
Thank you,
Barry.
Gary.
I
You're welcome.
appreciate. Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Rosa and Scott, for joining and supporting. We will touch bases again, and hopefully we are going to be starting your program on July 12th.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks.
For everyone.
All
Good
right.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.